Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Schenker, editor-in-chief of The Innovator, a new business magazine launched by Groupe Les Echos. And very happy to be here this afternoon with Caroline Tellier from PayPal and Hassan El Shabrawishi from AXA. And we're here to talk about embracing disruption in Fintech. Financial services is a really broad topic, but I think a good place to start is with the not always positive image that the sector as a whole has. Some studies have shown that more people would rather have a tooth pulled at the dentist than deal with their bank. When it comes to insurance companies' traditional models, if you ask most people to describe that, they would probably say, we pay a fair amount of money up front. The insurance company hopes they have to do nothing in return. And finally, when it comes to things like payments and remittance payments, for years, companies ripped off the poorest of the poor by charging them exorbitant rates for transferring money that they were earning and sending it back home to family. So what I'd like to do to open up this panel is to ask what can and is the financial services sector doing to find more positive models, business models, and also to have a more positive impact on people's lives. So let's start with you, Caroline, and talk about what PayPal does and how you're helping to change that bad image.
Thank you. So PayPal is the oldest fintech, I must say. So, 18 years old fintech. So we have a huge responsibility to make this industry more positive. When we talk about fintech, I think it can be confusing because, finance is a broad economy. So, we tend to differentiate payment from banking. And the core business of PayPal is more payment today. So it's been years that we are trying to disrupt payment and that we are trying to democratize payment. So what does it mean to democratize? It's a bit of a complex word. So it's to make it simpler, cheaper, safer as well, and open it to more and more people. So trying to make it accessible to the most people possible. So in terms of payment, we try to remove friction. That's the goal. We try to make it easier for people to have access to basic financial services. So if I take, for example, commerce, which is one of our clear core business. In commerce, there are still a lot of friction. So I can give you a figure as an example, but there is still 80% people that abandon their cart when they are shopping online. So, you could think that today online shopping is well developed and well optimized, and that's not the case. That's not the case because people have still a lot of issues when they are about to purchase online, and PayPal wants to help merchants and consumers. So I'd like to remind that we have 210 million consumers in the world and 15 million merchants. So that's the networks we have, and we try to help both sides of the networks to be more effective. So what we do to make commerce easier is we have launched services that are actually available to all PayPal account holders. So when you have a PayPal account, I don't know if some of you in the room have PayPal accounts, so maybe it's a good moment to do a bit of publicity for PayPal. But you have services like travel insurance. So I know we'll talk about insurance later. You have free return shipping. So a lot of those services actually you can get them when you have premium cards, but not necessarily with basic and free services like PayPal. So we try to give all those services for free for many people. Payment is also, outside of commerce, is also friends and family. relative. So you were talking about remittances.
Yes.
So that's exactly an industry where we are trying to bring value as well. So we do it, organically, but we bought also some startups. So we recently bought a startup called Zoom, where the core business is, sending and receiving money everywhere in the world. Because we don't necessarily realize in the developed countries that, for people who are not necessarily in a developed market or who have not necessarily access to a basic banking system, that it can be very expensive to cashing money, to send money. I think there is a figure saying that it's 10% of the disposable income of people that is spent to manage money,
Yes,
which is
exactly.
a big waste. Our CEO likes to say that it's expensive to be poor,
Yes.
which is a bit provocative, but I think is the reality.
So how much cost do you take out of remittance payments?
So it depends on the region. France has been a market where we saw a lot of remittances initiated from France. So recently, our not necessarily remittances, but P2P payment from person to person services in France, we make it totally free from France to the European market, which is quite disrupting, because you know how much money those type of companies make when they enable P2P transaction. And then when you send money from France or Europe, from another continent, you have commission applying. But again, we try to stay very competitive compared to the traditional actors. So I don't have all the commission in mind, but I invite you to go on the website and to compare by yourself. It's quite competitive regarding the traditional players.
Okay, thanks. Well, we'll come back to some of the interesting things that PayPal are doing, but I want to turn now to Hassan and talk about what some of the interesting things you're doing in the developing world. So can we start by talking about your micro-insurance products?
So before maybe getting to this, I just want to give the big context again on AXA. So if PayPal is the oldest fintech, we're the oldest startup, because AXA is a startup, is a company that started 30 years ago. And we really are very proud of this entrepreneurial spirit of how this company became today the largest company in the world in terms of revenue, and we want to keep it. And the only way to keep it is by redefining ourselves, redesigning our business model, and making sure that we are relevant to our customers. So, I mean, we had a panel this morning about fintech disruption and, embracing disruption, and how do we embrace disruption within AXA. And I was saying, we're not interested in technology. For us, technology is a mean to an end. We are fascinated about solving customer pains, about making sure that we are relevant, that we really, people wake up and say, I would like to have this service, and not like the experience that you've mentioned in your introduction. And to do this, we believe that technology is a good enabler to do it. But we don't wake up saying, how can we use this technology? We wake up saying, we are fascinated by this problem, and in order to solve this problem, we'll use technology to do it. And I will give you a concrete example to then answer the second part of your question. So you mentioned travel insurance. So we launched, almost 3 weeks ago, a project called Fizzy, which is a blockchain solution to pay in an automated manner claims for flight delays. So this is a no-claim process, and using blockchain makes it very sure and very transparent for customers. Mm-hmm. So, but it did not start by saying, we have blockchain, how can we use it? It started by knowing that when someone travels and they have an issue, they are using roaming to make a call. They don't have time to go through a very lengthy process in order to make a claim, so usually they don't do it. It's an issue that is increasing in Europe, where there are delays, and people sometimes are stranded in a place without support. And this one, we use technology, and it's completely automated. So by the time you land, you will receive your compensation. Behind it, there is a lot of technology. But for you as a customer, we try to solve your problem. The second thing is about the perception that you've mentioned. So this is something that is key to us, because we realize it, we feel it as not only as people working for AXA, but as consumers. You know, when you buy insurance, you sometimes can wonder whether this is an easy experience or not. And we always speak about the fact that we have a noble purpose within our industry. And when you look at how many claims we pay today, we pay a huge amount of claims compared to any other industry. So you are relevant. But what now matters and what we try to make sure of is that the experience is simple and it's concrete. So I want to give you few examples. So for instance, our role as a leader in this space, we decided that we want to accompany what we call emerging customers. So people who are in the emerging middle class and who today are not served by any financial institution because it's too expensive to serve them. And when you used to say this in the past, people say, you're crazy, you cannot do it, it's very expensive, every cost per policy will be increasingly high. And I'm happy to have here the leader of this program, so Garance, and please, if there are any questions, reach out to her afterwards, because they use technology as a way to reach millions of people who are today underserved. And I will use a word that she uses all the time. We are not targeting the poor. We are targeting the baker, the policeman, policewoman, the teacher, people who have needs. And these needs today are not covered. And they reach them through technology, through new ways, through new capabilities, not by making the premiums smaller, because I know you will ask me this question, how is it different? It's not about making something that it already is there, not adapted to their needs, but these are people who went to their homes, understood their needs, ate with them, talked to them, and tried to understand what is it that they really need. And they developed solutions for them that really are adapted to protecting them, not to slip back into poverty on one side, and to accompany them on, hopefully, another trajectory in their life of accompanying them to grow their income, protect their families, bring them security, protect them against risks. And we do this across different things, health, small assets that people could have so that they can be protected. And this is a belief that will not happen if you're not fully convinced as an organization to do it. Because if you put it in an Excel file, it may not make a lot of sense at the beginning, but you have to be convinced to prove that the model is sustainable and it works. And this is why we have very passionate people waking up every day to really just solve these problems for our customers.
If I understand correctly, these are people who have not had insurance policies before, right? So, as you say, you have to make it simple, which means no deductible, very clear of what you get for your money, right?
Yes, and it's an area exactly, the same challenges as PayPal. So we have very, very similar challenges, and we could actually, develop solutions together because we target the same conviction and the same needs. So you're absolutely right. These are very simple technologies, and at the same time, so you can use SMS. You don't need a smartphone, for instance. It's a no exclusion product, so you just get paid. And it works, and it's actually good. It's good from a business perspective, and it's win-win for the customer.
So how come we don't have more products like that in the developed world? And I ask that in a provocative way because, I have a daughter in her 20s who was between jobs in the U.S., and I needed to get her some interim insurance. And going through the traditional companies was an absolute nightmare. So what did we do? We went to a startup, went to Oscar, I could get a human being on the phone. They could explain super clearly, this is what we cover, and it's instant. We start immediately, and you can quit at any time. Why can't we have that?
So it's what we see today with innovation, which is fascinating. So I'm not neutral because I come from developing countries, but I always saw that innovation can come from the edges, and the idea of reverse innovation, of bringing in innovation from places that really designed it, not because it was pushed by regulation, but because it was designed from day one as to solve a pain point, to solve a need. So bringing back this is something very interesting. But the challenges of the Western world, and especially the US, is even bigger. When you look at the healthcare market in the US today, it's 45% of the world's healthcare market. If you ask any American person today, are you happy with your healthcare? They say no. Life expectancy is lowest than in all the OECD countries and all the Western world. And there's a real issue that people are only becoming claims payment solutions, but they're not trying to make you healthier and take care of your health. So we have, for instance, Emily Udia, who's working a lot on prevention in AXA, and who spoke in different panels about what is our role to wellness and prevention, and how can we make this, again, something that we're fascinated with. Difficult, hard to prove. People could tell you this is marketing. It is not. It is what every person, every one of us wake up in the morning to find solution where we can make wellness profitable and where we can make people move from this idea where we enter only when the risk happens, which is a very difficult moment. You know, you're calling someone who is sick and they are calling you because their mother, father, daughter, themselves are in a hospital. And you sort of ask them, you know, could you please give me your policy number? It's the last thing they want to hear. And what we decided is to take and to become the leader of changing our business model. And this is not, you know, things that we say here. You know, this is really put in an organizational perspective to solve these pain points, like the ones you mentioned in the US, with how can we make it more transparent? How can we interfere early, not late? How can we expand this relationship with our customers beyond the claim payment, but to enter before this happens, to be a wellness reference for them? Because consumers today are confused. You know, I wake up one day, I hear, you know, that if I take vitamin C, it will be good. If I take vitamin C, it will be bad. And every day these things change. So consumers are also confused about, you know, what type of advice they could be getting from people. And this is why we decided to do it in a very open manner. So we're happy to cooperate with people like PayPal so that we can solve these problems. We deal with, you know, other fintechs in the remittance space, for instance, so that we can solve specific issues for remittance. We try to solve health topics in the Western world, but the Western world is more difficult because you already have a lot of legacy to deal with at the beginning. And to do this, the last thing, we use different capabilities. So we have in AXA a team called AXA Strategic Ventures. They basically invest in startups. So this is a way to detect. So again, back to the topic question is how do we embrace disruption? So we invest in those startups. So this is a fund of around 400 million euros, either direct or funds of funds, to basically detect startups early on and try to integrate them within our business model. We have an incubator. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I was going to stop you there because I want to bring Caroline back into the conversation and talk a little bit about how they work with startups, and then we'll go back into, okay, so let's talk a little bit more about how you are working on pain points. And, you also work, you mentioned already that you bought a startup, but you also work with startups in other ways. So let's talk a little bit about that.
About my experience?
About PayPal in general.
So we work a lot with startups. So first, we are operating in very regulated markets. So I guess as AXA, there is a lot of regulation where it makes us difficult also to innovate ourselves. So sometimes it's good to go and look for the players that have the capability and the regulation with them. So if I take the experience of the example of our travel insurance, we've partnered with someone because PayPal doesn't have any insurance license. So each time we want to go a bit beyond, we need to find the right partner. And actually, that's important. We work with startup, but above all, we work with partners. So we try to find the right partners to grow faster, and also to collaborate in our ecosystem. With startups in particular, the vision of PayPal, the one shared by our CEO, is to become the operating system of the new the application that needs a payment brick. So we would like to be the payment operating system. And we see strong needs because we see a lot of startups, also surfing on the the trends of today. One of the big trends that we've seen in the last years, which is especially true in France, is sharing economy. So we see a lot of startups surfing on this sharing economy trend and trying to help people make money from what they own, what they know how to do, their know-how, their assets. So we are the operating system, for example, of companies like Uber or Airbnb or BlaBlaCar. So maybe today we don't consider them as startups anymore, but they were small companies recently. So we have helped them grow. And we will try continue to do that. Another example is McDonald's, which again is not a startup, but at some point they wanted to launch an app with an order ahead experience. So again, PayPal has partnered with McDonald's to help them deliver this order ahead app where you can order your Big Mac and then you pay with PayPal on the app. So really the idea is to be more than just the payment button and enable new commerce format for our partners and for the startups to help them deliver their vision more easily.
Okay, so from here, I think what would be interesting is to talk about beyond working with startups, how do you innovate from the inside? And I know you both have really interesting perspectives on this. So Hassan, let me turn to you a little bit, and then I'd like to come back about your personal experience and role in PayPal.
So the reason why I was chosen by our CEO is because of the entrepreneurship, which we share with Caroline. We were just speaking about it now, and the idea is that you cannot mix only ideas. It's not about ideas. It's about having people willing to execute them and make them a reality, especially in an organization where you work in multiple geographies and where you need to really be very disciplined in the way you execute. So I will let her speak about the entrepreneurship side. I will be happy to jump in, but I will tell you what we do in general in AXA to bring this capability within our DNA, which has been always the reason why we existed and why we grew. So today we have an incubator, an accelerator called Kamet. That is well funded by AXA, so it's a 100 million euro fund, where they work on recruiting entrepreneurs. They work with them not only on ideation, but on helping them to execute and to basically launch insurtechs from these ideas and make them separate from the existing business, but yet very closely linked so that they can basically help them in transforming their business model. We also created what we call AXA Next, which is, I think the name talks about itself, is how can we find what is relevant for customers in the future, and we do it through prototyping capability where we start ideas, and this is where, for instance, Fizzy was born, which is the travel insurance idea that I tell you about. This is the place that is hosting our program on emerging customers, so that we can continue investing in this capability. So you can call it a launchpad of testing new technologies, new ideas as a way to solve customer problems and customer needs. We also have detection capabilities. So we have a lab in Silicon Valley and another lab in Shanghai where they help us to detect needs of needs and trends that we could actually leverage. And this is also backed up by what we call digital partnerships team that work with Airbnb, with the Ubers, and in fact, they are all our clients as well, and we serve them in many, many different geographies and markets, where we either insure, the people who take the trip with Uber, or the drivers themselves in some markets. So, like PayPal, we try to basically be relevant to this ecosystem as much as we can, and embrace it through these different units and capabilities that we've built at AXA.
And I think it's sure that the introduction of autonomous cars is going to be an opportunity for both of your businesses, because people will need insurance while they're riding in the autonomous car, and the cars themselves are going to be automatically paying for gas and other things, and someone has to, do the payment portion of this. So there are a lot of new types of services that will be in demand. Caroline, you're uniquely positioned at PayPal due to your background. So tell us a little bit about how you came to PayPal and then why you've stayed.
Yeah, so I joined PayPal 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago. My background was I spent 5 years in consulting, so I worked at Bain in Paris for 5 years. Then I launched a startup, a travel website specialized in city breaks with a strong technology. So I'm an engineer, so my education is engineer. So I partnered with my school to develop algorithms to launch this startup, and I did that for almost 2 years, and then I've been headhunted. So I joined PayPal in 2010 as a product and strategy person. So I was very happy about the opportunity, because it was a mix of financial services I did for a long time at Bain, and the web and startup part I had with my own experience. But my ambition was to stay a couple of years. Like really. If you had told me what I wanted at that time, I would have said to you, in 3 years I would launch a new startup, because that's really what motivates me. And 7 years after, I'm still at PayPal. So, really the mission I've been given as PayPal was to develop the new services, in a company that was super US focused. How you bring entrepreneurs to develop the relevant services for the region. And I think, that's what I did really during the first 5 years, which then opened me new opportunities. So then I become the head of sales for France, which was super far from my DNA. I would never had thought I would do such job in my life. But, a couple of months after, it opened me the role of general manager for France. And I continue every day, to innovate, because that's really... again, my DNA. I encourage all people in my team to have their pet project, the things they really believe in. Because, for a company like PayPal, I think because we are a very strong leader, because we are in a very regulated market, it would be easy to have a roadmap fully, as we said, like, dictated by executives or dictated by regulation. We could spend our days, working on how we are more compliant with the new regulation, and how we develop the new shiny object that our leader has in mind. But we made a real shift a few years ago around, pushing really customer-driven innovation. So first, it can sound easy, but that was not in a company like ours. So we really try to drive innovation from the consumer, but also from the employee. So employee-driven innovation, and we see that more like and more in big groups where they have those sort of startup weekend, or few hours spending in really thinking of what's the future of the company, and I think it works really really well. And we also have new leaders that have come at PayPal. So if you take our Chief Product Officer, John Koons, is coming from the acquisition of Zoom, which is our super remittance startup that has been bought a couple of months ago. Our head of North America is the founder of Bill Me Later, which was a credit company that he built a couple of years ago as well. Bill Reddy, our COO, is the founder of Braintree, which is the PSP, specialized in mobile that again we bought 3 years ago. So we have also tried to give a lot of power to those new leaders who are entrepreneurs, from heart.
So I think the message that both of it is very strong message that both of you have given is even if both of your companies think of yourselves as startups and you work with very young startups, that it's very important for your own company to keep innovating from the inside, because otherwise, you'll end up you yourselves will end up being disintermediated. This is probably a good time for me to see if there are any questions from the audience. No. Okay, so how long do we have? 5 minutes, okay. So let's go back to the questions of entrepreneurship and your experience at AXA.
In 2014, I was asked by AXA to launch AXA in Egypt, where I'm from. And it was a trend by our management to really choose people to go back to their countries, to their home countries, especially if they were away for a long time. They absorb the values, the culture, the ethics of the company, and to become entrepreneurs themselves to really do this. My dream was always to become an entrepreneur. Life has not allowed me the opportunity to do it for different reasons. I was happy to be an entrepreneur within a big organization. So I left. I went to Egypt with a BlackBerry, not even an iPhone now, in a hotel room. And in 2 years, I left AXA with AXA Egypt with around 500 people and more than 150 million euros of revenue. It was a fascinating experience. And as soon as I came back to Paris to lead this job, it was exactly what you've mentioned, Jennifer, is I wanted to give the opportunity to people to feel that the organization trusts them in the same way, and to tell them, if you have this idea, go ahead and do it. And I believe that Caroline mentioned this, in the way she manages her team. It is just if you mix people's passions with their professional ones, it is a magical equation, and it's a magical one, so that they can, they wake up, they go to work, and they do what they love, and at the same time they get rewarded for it. And without this, we could not have done what we've done with very limited resources, very limited means, in a very entrepreneurial manner, with very scarce resources to achieve what we have achieved today. So thank you for allowing me to speak about that, because it's something that I'm very proud of. And I'm very proud of AXA to have the vision and to be so forward-looking, to be having these pockets of growth within it, giving people that opportunity and chance to become entrepreneurs. And yes, you're right, organizations will not be able to be relevant if they don't capture this, innovations from within their teams. Because, we are not only employees, we are also users of these services, and we know what the future is, and we can do more. So, thank you.
Okay. So just as a last thought, you mentioned that you started the business in Egypt from zero and built it up to generate some significant revenue. What was the secret to getting? Because I imagine that you were touching people who hadn't had insurance products before, right? So how did you figure out what people need, and how did you to fill that demand?
So I was not expecting this question, but I think I'm already getting tears in my eyes with the question, because it was really the success factor. When I arrived in Egypt, it's a country that people do not really buy insurance because there is a culture of religion where basically God is responsible for risk, and that's not something that you could change. So I went to meet different CEOs of foreign companies, telling them, why is insurance penetration so low in this country? And I was fascinated, and this is where the opportunity started, when they told me, you know, because people are not very well educated, so they don't know how insurance works, and they don't have the awareness of insurance. And as an Egyptian person, I found this very intimidating. You know, when they said, you know, it's they are wrong. It's not that our offering is the wrong one. And the only thought that came to my mind is like having a restaurant and you just cook bad food and you blame your customers for not using your restaurant. So we tried to design products from the bottom up. We found a big gap in healthcare, where basically the public sector was very rundown, was very bad. People were not treated with empathy or care in these public hospitals. Private hospitals were extremely expensive for that emerging middle class that we spoke about, and we developed offering for that segment where we could negotiate with hospitals and build clinics within AXA to provide a better service than that. And the result was we were aiming and we were hoping and we were dreaming in our Excel files to have 5,000 customers in the first year of operation. We ended up having 80,000 customers in the first 6 months of operation. So it could tell you to what extent it was successful when you are true about the fact that, you know, you want to develop solutions for real needs and real problems and not just push something where people simply don't need.
That's great. And Caroline, let me ask you, of all these different new products that you have helped launch, which one would you highlight and in terms of, you know, you were particularly proud of a solution that you think was very impactful?
So when I took my job, you know, my role was to find new services to you know, deliver our promise to merchants, which was, you know, PayPal is going to help you increase conversion on your website. So you know, thanks to PayPal, you are going to let go more people that are about to buy, but, you know, suddenly you don't know why they don't purchase. So I try to analyze the reason why consumers were not necessarily finalizing a purchase. And, you know, one which came to my mind, which again sounds, you know, a bit less risky than other, and there was a big aspect of, you know, risk on this one. It was the return shipping costs. So, you know, you have people buy more and more online today, whatever product, fashion in particular, and so, you know, they buy something impulsively because, you know, they like it, but they don't necessarily know if it's going to fit them. So we realized that return could be a big pain point when shopping online. So that's been one of my first ideas, but again I had to prove it could be not that risky, because, you know, it was easy to understand that people would buy more if return shipping would be free, but, you know, the question was, okay, but how much it's going to cost us? And so I put in place a pilot, you know, a proof of concept with an insurer actually. And we launched that, and it's been a huge success. Like, you know, for our consumer that like this product. So, you know, I don't know if some of you have used that, but again, for me, it's a great reason to use PayPal when you shop online.
We'll use it more if it's AXA behind it.
We have no more insurance behind actually, because, you know, we totally manage the risk. So we get rid of the insurance, and we're actually financing it ourselves. But yeah, so it was a big success, because on one side it was super efficient for consumers who shop more, and second, it was also super efficient for merchants who actually see even more value of accepting PayPal, because that's cost they don't have to pay themselves. So yeah, it opened us the door to innovate more and more in our markets.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm afraid we'll have to cut it off here, but I want to thank both of our panelists for sharing their stories with us. Thank you both very much.